Sara Khan, director of the anti-extremist group Inspire, is doing exactly that. Welcome, Sara.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Because of social media, I think Britain does face a completely different threat compared to 10 years ago.
Absolutely, and we cannot underestimate the impact of social media. We know that, I think the Metropolitan Police said they take down 1,000 extremist websites and content every single week. That's around 50,000 a year. But the problem with that is that every time you take down an extremist website or content, 100 will go up as well. So that's a constant battle, and that's the problem with the internet just more widely.
We know there's always grooming, and there always has been, but would you say it's easier now than 10 years ago to groom?
I think now the problem is ISIS's brand is so strong. That's the key issue here. So they talk about the fact that they've created this utopia, and it's based on a very religious political ideology, and that's what's swaying people to come over. So whether it's a young man who wants to fight for ISIS or it's a whole family that want to go, they are using the name of God in particular. And of course, using the name of God is one of the most powerful ways of trying to convince people about your ideology.
But it's easier to get to them now, though, surely, than it was 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago, they didn't have probably Facebook or anything like that, did they?
No, of course, but also we cannot ignore the fact that there are people in communities who also condone ISIS, who condone their ideology. I mean, there's now a lot of discussion around what we call non-violence extremists, extremists who may not necessarily advocate violence, but they share the same ideology, their hatred for the West, promote denigration of others, and those kind of arguments. And that, in my opinion, is very dangerous because you're putting people on that path towards radicalisation.
Sarah, that a lot of those people who condone it are on British soil.
Yes, they are.
And David Cameron has said it's up to the Muslim community. I know you don't like that expression, but I can't think of any other way of describing it, that more people have got to speak out because they are strangely silent. And also it's up to families to ask themselves, what's going on in my own house?
Absolutely, and what we say is that everybody has a role to challenge extremism. We say to parents, you will recognise the early signs of radicalisation in your children because you know your children best, you know when their personalities are changing. But then schools now have a duty placed upon them from last week that they can help and assist. And if they recognise someone as being drawn to extremism, they can help and safeguard that young person. But we all absolutely have a role to play. And yes, there are some people in our country who do condone IS, and I know this because we experience so much abuse and threats from them, so they are absolutely here condoning IS ideology.
You know, last week I made some comments on this show about it's up to some Muslim families to say, you know, what are my kids up to? You know, they must police their families better. And I got abused on Twitter, just as I know you have suffered that abuse. It just gave me an inclination of what you must encounter on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think that the point you raise is very interesting because we've seen in the media how families whose daughters or sons have gone over, often some of those families have blamed the police.
Yes.
And I think that's wrong because a lot of the times, how will the police or security services know what's going on through the heads of young teenagers? If you as parents can't see the change in your own children, so to kind of blame it squarely on the police is really quite unfair.
Yeah.
But
do you think that young Muslims in this country feeling victimised, do you think that that makes them more vulnerable to radicalisation?
I think we live in a very interesting time in the sense that you have what I call the 9/11 generation of young Muslims who are growing up constantly, their faith is in the spotlight. When we talk about the so-called Islamic State, people will associate ISIS, extremist Islamist ideology, as being Islam, and they cannot distinguish between the two. So I think there is that climate there, and I think a lot of young Muslims, if they don't know the difference between Islamist extremism and Islam, they will feel that it's our faith that's under attack. But at the same time, we also know that the work that we do, that there are certain organisations, I call them the Prevent lobby, they go up and down the country, fueling that marginalisation, talking about how you can't be British, and again, that fuels that lack of belonging to British society.
There are elements within the Muslim community who feel that they are being picked on. Now, it's not just the people who are committing these acts come from a whole variety of backgrounds. So